street lights. We've got Halloween coming up. So Ray also reminded me that if you will look, where you have a street light that is out, that is not on or something, if you will look on that telephone pole, somewhere there's a number. You can call EPP, give them that number, and advise them we want our street lights on, particularly before Halloween, for the protection of our children. That's our utmost priority here when it comes to the Halloween, is our children. So take advantage of it, duplicate it, multiply it, make sure let's get these lights on. That's all I've got to say. It's only notes I've got. So at this time, Alex McKeel, our local historian here in the valley, Alex has done a great job. I'm looking forward to what you had to share with us tonight, as well as your guests.
Thank you, President Bradley. My name is Alex McKeel. For those who don't know, I'm the chairman for History and Environment for the Lookout Valley Neighborhood Association. And a few months ago, I asked President Bradley if we could have one meeting every so often to talk about some type of historical significance in Lookout Valley, and he actually enjoyed the idea. So for our first speaker, I thought since October will be the 155th anniversary for the attack on Browns Ferry and the Battle of Waxahachie and a lot of other historical Civil War battles happening between September and November 1863. I thought who better to come here to talk about the Battle of Waxahachie and the attack on Browns Ferry than the main historian for the Chattanooga-Chickamauga battlefield, my good friend Jim Ogden. And I want to please welcome him to the Lookout Valley Neighborhood Association.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me here to speak with you this evening, to talk a little bit about the important history that unfolded here in Lookout Valley. Alex is passing out a handout. It's actually two maps on the same map. One side slightly enlarged over the other, to be the principal illustration for my talk this evening. And while those get handed out, let me just say briefly about another set of programs that the National Military Park and its partners. Many of you all probably know that for 30 years now, Chickamauga and Chattanooga National Military Park has had a Friends group. Actually, for many years, we had two Friends groups. Those two organizations combined last year and have taken on a new name, National Park Partners, Chickamauga, Chattanooga, and Moccasin Bend. And while the name has changed, much of what they do in supporting the National Military Park and its programs continues in the same fashion. And we're in the fall of the year right now. And thanks to the support of Greg Vital, an area businessman, this is the 13th year of the Vital Lecture Series. 3 speakers on various subjects, and there'll be another one of the presentations on Monday, October the 15th, and then the third one on Monday, November the 5th. I do have flyers for those programs. If anybody is interested in one of those, you can see me after the program, and I can get you that. They also are on the National Military Parks website and some other points as well. 155 years ago, the sense that something important was unfolding in this area would have been inescapable. For the last several months, this region had seen the presence of large military forces. Chattanooga had been a Confederate garrison post and hospital center through 1862 and into 1863. and had seen thousands of Confederate soldiers camped, including here in Lookout Valley in the late summer of 1862, before those troops had marched on north towards Kentucky for a series of campaigns and battles there and subsequently in Middle Tennessee. But then in early July, the Confederate Army of Tennessee, principal Confederate Army in this region, withdrew out of Middle Tennessee in face of a Union advance, withdrew over the Cumberland Mountains, over the Tennessee River to the west of here, at Battle Creek, near South Pittsburgh, and at Kelly's Ferry, on pontoon bridges, floating military bridges that had been constructed across the then rising Tennessee River as a result of recent rains, some much enjoyed rain given the drought that by that summer of 1863 was already a year long. But that Confederate Army had withdrawn across the Tennessee River, and several thousand of those troops camped here in Lookout Valley, while the majority of Braxton Bragg, the Confederate Army commander, and the majority of his force moved over the northern tip of Lookout Mountain and into the immediate area of Chattanooga. But as late summer approached, the Union Army advanced again, and the approach of Union forces, evident to many by being able to see Union soldiers just across the Tennessee River on Moccasin Bend, as early as August the 21st, 1863, signaled that certainly the next phase in this grand drama was going to be unfolded. And indeed, over the next few days, a couple of weeks, the Union maneuvers over the mountains to the north and west and southwest of where we are, into the Great Valley between Lookout Mountain and the Sand Mountain Range, south of here, but then appearing out of the Running Water Creek Gap into the northern end of Lookout Valley was clear indication that the Union Army was indeed advancing on this area. Some of the skirmishing associated with the Confederate evacuation of Chattanooga happened right here in this valley, on those hilltops just to the south of where we are now, along the corridor of the Wauhatchie Turnpike. As Union troops advance northward, the Confederates attempt to resist their approach, only to then fall back across Lookout Creek and onto Lookout Mountain. But with Union troops crossing Lookout Mountain, 15 and 35 miles south of here, Confederates evacuate the city of Chattanooga on September the 7th, 8th, and 9th, the last of their troops abandoning the northern tip of Lookout Mountain to Union troops on September the 9th, as well as the city. And the Confederate Army retreats south into Georgia, and the Federals will pursue. We wind up then with the Battle of Chickamauga on September the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And I hope that some of you all took in some of the programs the National Military Park offered just a few weeks ago to recognize that 155th anniversary of that battle. Chickamauga, of course, is counted as a Confederate victory. They drive the Union Army from the scene of that engagement. However, the Union Army was able to withdraw into Chattanooga, abandoning the northern tip of Lookout Mountain on September the 23rd and 24th, and retreating into fortifications constructed in a 1 square mile area in the bend of the Tennessee River. If you look at the handout that I provided you, on the side where the map is oriented in the horizontal format, there near the center of the page, just a little bit above center, you can see the city of Chattanooga. The blue lines or blocks on this map represent the Union forces. Union Army withdraws into the immediate area of Chattanooga and fortifies itself within that 1 square mile area in the bend of the Tennessee River, maintaining possession of the area north of the river itself. Hastily, Confederate fortifications around Chattanooga are reworked to become Union fortifications, and additional fortifications are constructed as well. And by the time the Confederates really come up to the outskirts of Chattanooga on September the 24th, the Union Army is entrenched to its eyes around Chattanooga. Confederate Commander Braxton Bragg makes the decision that instead of launching what he figured indeed would be a costly frontal assault against those growing Union fortifications, that he would attempt to besiege the Union Army in Chattanooga. Now, if you look up a siege in the dictionary or encyclopedia, or I guess today on your smartphone, you would find that the typical siege is a true encirclement of one military force surrounding another military force. But in this particular case, the Confederate siege of Chattanooga is not a true encirclement, because the Union Army retained control of the area north of the Tennessee River, and because of the big hairpin bend of the Tennessee, the Moccasin Bend, the Confederate siege is really going to be more a strangulation. When the Confederates occupied the northern tip of Lookout Mountain on September the 24th, and thereafter put troops here in the northern end of Lookout Valley, most critically in the area where we are right now, and along the banks of the Tennessee River to the north of us, or downstream from here along the Tennessee. What the Confederates wind up doing in their siege of Chattanooga is essentially creating a stranglehold on the Union Army in Chattanooga. By having these troops on the northern tip of Lookout Mountain, and in this very part of Lookout Valley, sitting astride the then unusable tracks of the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad, unusable because of the destruction of a number of key railroad bridges on that rail line, most critically the Running Water Creek Bridge to the west of us here, the wartime stone pier and wooden structure that had been burned by the Confederates in late August of 1863, the then version of the big concrete and steel bridge that we drive under on I-24 as we go west today, and then also the destruction of the bridge over the Tennessee River at Bridgeport. The Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad is not functional at that time. The tracks are still there. In fact, the wooden bridge over Lookout Creek is still standing at this time in late September, early October of 1863, but no trains can run on the Nashville and Chattanooga tracks. But paralleling those tracks, or nearly so, are some critical road routes, wagon routes, and it is those routes which are the main supply line for the Union Army coming into Chattanooga. The Union Army, having advanced down from Louisville, Kentucky to Nashville to Stevenson and Bridgeport, Alabama, and then winning the city of Chattanooga, their supplies, after they got Chattanooga, would have come in along the line of the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad. Again, remember, it's not functioning. They've got engineers starting to work on rebuilding those big bridges, but the railroad is not functioning. But the supplies wagons would have moved along the road routes that parallel the Nashville and Chattanooga Railroad. And when the Union Army withdrew from the northern tip of Lookout Mountain on September the 23rd and 24th, withdrew back into the city of Chattanooga, surrendered the northern tip of Lookout Mountain to the Confederates, and the Confederates occupied it, all of a sudden, what have the Confederates stepped onto and across? They've gotten onto the Union main line of supply, their main line of communications, the road routes by which ideally every day roughly 600 to 700 Union wagons would have traveled, bringing supplies to the Union Army in Chattanooga. Now, the fact that this would happen was clearly evident to the Union Army commander, the Ohioan William Stark Rosecrans, even on the afternoon of the defeat at Chickamauga, the afternoon of September the 20th. Some of you all know that as a result of a poor decision that Rosecrans makes on the Chickamauga battlefield on September the 20th, the right half of the Union line will collapse. He gets chased off of the battlefield. He gets run back into the city of Chattanooga. But even though he was forced back into the city of Chattanooga, and eventually the Union troops will withdraw there as well, Rosecrans, that very afternoon of the 20th, began to make preparations for what he expected would happen. And that is indeed that he would lose the northern tip of Lookout Mountain. Messages go out from his headquarters in Chattanooga to all of those wagons moving on the roads, either headed from Chattanooga to Bridgeport and Stevenson, or headed from Stevenson and Bridgeport towards Chattanooga. He orders those wagons to be redirected, to be directed to routes on the north side of the Tennessee River. And even though it will take a couple of days, those wagon trains will indeed begin making their way towards Chattanooga, not on the most direct route from Stevenson and Bridgeport, Alabama, across the pontoon bridge at Bridgeport, and then along Running Water Creek and into Lookout Valley and through this part of Lookout Valley and over Lookout Mountain. But instead, they would move from Stevenson and Bridgeport through Jasper and then up into the Sequatchie Valley and come over the Walden's Ridge Range via the Anderson Turnpike. It will be a circuitous supply route, Rosecrans knows, but it will be one that should be protected by the barrier of the Tennessee River itself. And so when indeed Confederate troops occupied the northern tip of the mountain and this part of Lookout Valley on September the 24th and the days immediately following, and began a siege that was a strangulation, it was something that Rosecrans had anticipated and had taken some steps to try to mitigate. But the one thing that Rosecrans had not anticipated was just how long he would have to rely upon that 60 to 70 mile circuitous route from Stevenson to Bridgeport to Jasper to Anderson's Crossroads in Sequatchie Valley and over Walden's Ridge on the Anderson Turnpike, essentially Tennessee 127 today, and then down into Chattanooga, coming down Walden's Ridge on a route that's even steeper than the W Road. I tell that to some people who've driven the W Road and they can't imagine a road on the side of the mountain steeper than the W Road. But the wartime road coming down the mountain was considerably steeper than the W Road. But Rosecrans did not anticipate how long he would have to rely on that route. And every day that they have to use that circuitous route, particularly after, as it turns out, the drought was broken when it began to rain late on September the 30th and rained 19 of the next 53 days, it becomes almost impossible to move wagons over that route in any numbers to get any quantity of supplies into Chattanooga. And Union rations in Chattanooga begin to be reduced from a full 3 pounds of food a day per man to 3/4 of a ration, to 2/3 of a ration, to 1/2 a ration, to 1/3 a ration, to 1/4 a ration. Imagine trying to get by day after day on just 1/4 of what we normally eat. As bad as that might be for the individual soldiers, that was nothing in comparison to what the animals got. Every horse or mule was entitled to 25 to 26 pounds of food. And the ration for the 45,000 Union Army horses and mules went from that 25 to 26 pounds of food a day to essentially zero. And over the next month, 10,000 of the Union Army's horses and mules are going to die from starvation and overwork, and thousands more will be worked to the point where they can't work any longer. They're put into large corrals on the top of Ogden's Ridge to where it is hoped that the situation will be redeemed and they can then be rehabilitated. Some of you know on the top of Ogden's Ridge, or on turning off of 127, there is a road called Corral Road. That road gets its name from these large Union Army horse and mule corrals built in the woods out there where these starving animals were put. I've often wondered whether if someone were to look hard enough today, we could still find the moldering remains or the bleached bones of some of those hundreds, probably several thousand horses and mules that died up there that winter. But the possession of the northern tip of the mountain and this part of Lookout Mountain astride the Walhatchee Pike and both the branch that went down Lookout Valley southward and the branch that went westward to Kelly's Ferry. Confederates sitting astride this area is the strangulation of the Union Army in Chattanooga. Now, the Confederates themselves, while they have troops in this part of Lookout Valley, are never able to have many troops. The main Confederate line, and if you look again at your horizontal map, the main Confederate line, or the red blocks on this map, is deployed along Missionary Ridge, along the western base of Missionary Ridge, about where Dodds Avenue is today, and then across Chattanooga Valley between Missionary Ridge and Lookout Mountain, and then here into the valley. For the troops, the Confederate troops who are stationed in Lookout Valley, their supplies come from their railroad supply head, which is Chickamauga Station, out where the Chattanooga Airport is today, on the Western Atlantic Railroad. And for the Confederate soldiers stationed here in Lookout Valley, their rations have to be hauled over what? Over the northern tip of Lookout Mountain by the Walhatchee Pike. There's only one problem. What did the Union Army retain when they retreated into Chattanooga? The area on the north side of the Tennessee River, including the steep hills at the southern end of Stringer's Ridge on Moccasin Bend, those wooded hills above the buildings of the State Mental Health Hospital. As we travel on I-24 around the tip of the mountain today, we see the buildings of the State Mental Health Hospital there, and rising just above them, beyond them, are wooded hills. And on the top of those wooded hills, the Union Army positioned 2 batteries of artillery. And while it might look a lot further, it is actually less than a mile's distance from the top of those hills to most places on the northern tip of Lookout Mountain. And even though the Confederates are here in the valley, they can't have many men here because they can't